years old at the end of slavery. He was noted for his cowboy acts of bravery. Just do like that if you want to. Okay, so this week first of all, we have a guest star. My dad, Rodney Brooks. You can say hello.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so my dad is a career journalist. You were deputy managing editor of the money section of USA Today for 30 years. But we're talking because my dad came into town this week to check out my Nat Love comic book, which is still on display at the Denver Art Museum. You discovered Nat Love late teens, college?
Teens.
Okay.
Early teens, yes. And, I just know I got a book. I had to get it from the library.
Yeah.
Because it's not like there were places in my neighborhood you could get black books. But, so how I discovered him, I don't remember. I just remember I got the book. I read his biography or autobiography, and I read it in one sitting. I was just fascinated that there was a black cowboy because, I'm a child of the 60s, right? And there were plenty of Western TV shows and there was plenty of John Wayne movies. None of them featured a black cowboy, right? And a little known fact, actually, older people may know, there was a black Roy Rogers. His name was Herb Jeffries, and Herb Jeffries did 4 all-black westerns in like 1939. Okay, one of them was called Harlem Rides the Range, and another was called Bronze Buckaroo. They weren't very well made, but they had a black singing cowboy, and it was an all-black cast. So
1939.
And I didn't discover Herb Jeffries until I was an adult. So.
Okay. 1939, just to give a comic connection, that was the year Batman was created.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So you've seen these movies and then you read this story of Nat Love and you were like surprised that there was a black cowboy.
Right, because there were no images of black cowboys, and it wasn't until later that you learned that many or most of the cowboys were black, and that's something that's not. Well, they didn't teach that part when you got to the West. In fact, the only parts of our history books that dealt with black history were slavery, which they kind of glossed over, and maybe a little bit about George Washington Carver.
Right.
But
yeah, it stands out to me because you made such a point when I was a kid of making sure that I learned a lot of black history, and so for there to be like so much more. That even you are still learning at this point in your life it's just something. It's just
and so let me add, thank you very much, because Alan teaches me so much about black history. Real talk. I mean, I'm from Colorado, and I know a bunch of Colorado things, but I don't know as much black history as I would have liked.
Yeah.
But I'm learning, and so I really appreciate all the things that I'm learning from that you've taught him, and then it's just really cool. It's never too late to learn about your history. Okay, but yeah, so thank you.
All right,
and I did not learn it in classes. Now, okay, what I learned was because I was an avid reader, so I was basically self-taught. By the time I got to high school, I was really into it, and that's when we were also getting into the 70s, which is when the Black Power experience,
right?
So and then you started to see the blaxploitation movies. So it wasn't like the other black children who were in my classes learned the black history that I learned.
Okay, so after you saw this, after you read the book about Nat Love, at some point you decided you were going to write a book.
Yes, and I actually drew the picture that you see of Nat Love. I drew.
Oh.
Okay, and made it into like a poster thing. And I wrote the title of the book was they called him Deadwood Dick, right? And so that was on my wall. you've seen some things that were on my wall when I was a kid. You still kid me about a couple of them, but yes, I was so impressed that there was a black cowboy and the amazing things that he did.
Right. All right, and just for people who are watching, Nat Love won a competition in Deadwood, South Dakota. It was a cowboy competition, and because he did so well, they gave him the nickname Deadwood Dick. There are a few cowboys who lay claim to the name, but he's one of the biggest ones. And so my father's book name, They Call Me Deadwood Dick, was based on that nickname.
That's right.
Yeah, that book never materialized, but I didn't even know you made the poster. That's something.
I know, right? Because I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were an artist.
Well, not as good as and I was really good at copying pictures as opposed to freestyle drawing.
Do you still draw?
No.
It's never too late.
It's never too late to pick up a dream you had when you were a kid.
Yes, but it wasn't a dream for me. The writing part was a dream for me, right?
Okay,
Yes.
yes. So
And
you
he did it.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Decades later, the Denver Art Museum is doing renovations to their Martin building. They decided to do a Western section. And I was like, yeah, cool. So they hired me to do this story. So I read his whole autobiography, but they only had enough to pay me to do like 7 pages. So I had to distill his whole autobiography down to 7 pages. There was this Sean Connery movie called Outland. Did you ever see it?
Yes.
Okay, you might be the one. I don't think I've ever seen it. But there was a comic book adaptation of it by this Jim Steranko. He was like a very famous Marvel Comics artist.
Okay.
And he oriented it sideways so that it was more cinematic. And it's really brilliant. Anyone wants to look up Jim Steranko Outland, you should check it out. But I thought, this is a great way to tell a big story like Nat Love. So I did the same thing. I oriented it that way. So I basically picked 7 big moments from the book. Those are the big drawings. And then smaller panels give a little more detail. All these decades later, I was able to create this thing for the museum. And then I worked my father's title into the art.
So when you read the actual autobiography,
Yeah.
What was your biggest surprise?
As I was reading it, I noticed he felt this, there was a theme of him feeling freedom whenever he rode a horse. He didn't say it like that, but as I read it, like when slavery was still happening, he was a kid, the earliest things, the slave owners' children would give him like nickels to ride wild horses, and which was dangerous, but he would do it, and he felt like a sense of freedom. And then he was 11 when slavery ended, and like his whole life, like, he did stuff with, I think he met Jesse James a couple times, and like a lot of those cowboys. Billy the Kid, yeah. But every time he talked about riding a horse, it was the time he seemed to feel the most free. And so that's the thing that I built on in my retelling of his life. If anybody wants to read the full thing, the book is public domain now, But if you want to read the cool version, then my comic book is available. So this is your first time coming to see that exhibit.
Yes.
So I guess, what was it like for you to see it?
When I think about reading that book for the first time when I was, 13, 14.
Yeah.
And I was probably closer to 16 because that's when I really started getting into Black history. And then to see a whole wall.
Yeah.
It's pretty, actually it's really enlightening to be here in Denver, Colorado, and to find out so much about the Black West and the Black Cowboys that I did not know, and I think most people don't know.
Yeah.
So since I've been here, I've learned about some of the Black Cowboys of the West, but there's such a rich history of the Black West, especially here in Colorado.
Yes.
As someone from Colorado, when and how did you learn that history, and were you surprised that there was such a rich history of the Black West that isn't necessarily taught in schools?
You ask such great questions. Seriously. And I am from Colorado, as we mentioned earlier, but the Black history was kind of like I don't want to say non-existent, but it was just small. And so in elementary school, I went to McGlone Elementary, which is in Montbello. And so it was like a black elementary school, well, the blackest. One of the blackest schools in the neighborhoods. And so they kind of taught us little things about like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, but we didn't really get deep into Black history or really making sure it was in our souls. So I just know like the basics about Black history, but Alan helps me to understand so much more about Black history that I don't know when he's asking me questions. I'm like, I don't know about that. But that's okay because there's so much information in the world to know. And so it's never too late to learn about your history or your family, okay? All right, so yes.
So much motivation.
Yes, that's right. That's what okay.
All right, so this Nat Love comic book is available on my website.
Yes.
People can get it. They go to Denver Art Museum. This is it. Look at it. Okay, I'm getting the glare off. Okay. So, Dad, I thought since you're the guest, you could read a page. It'll be the page that has your title on it.
So this is the page from, they call me Deadwood Dick, huh? Okay, so my cowboy work took me all around, even into Mexico. So I became fluent in Spanish. Also met other famous cowboys like Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and Wild Bill. No law was respected in this wild country except the law of might. So between cattle herding trips, I found myself in Deadwood, South Dakota, with loads of other cowboys bored as all get out. So we put in some shooting and roping contests for a $200 prize, which was a lot of money in that day.
All right.
Okay, so I've heard others lay claim to it, but because of my exceptional victories that day, I was nicknamed Deadwood Dick by the townspeople. I've always carried that name with honor.
Nice. Nat Love is the story of Zach Love when he's sitting above or above. He tried to ride a horse when he set a different course. People try to hit him with a different force, but of course,
Yeah. Nat Love. Let's try it one more time.
he was 11 years old at the end of slavery. He was noted for his cowboy acts of bravery.